And there we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 382. I am your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for your patience. We had a little bit of technical issues getting started today, exactly on time, a couple minutes late for that, but we'll catch up very quickly. So, hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving in the United States. For those who celebrated, it is that glorious fourth quarter time of holiday year, and it is an interesting time that we get into between Thanksgiving and Christmas, um, which actually was the inspiration of today's topic because I see so often a lot of knee-jerk reactions or short-term, oh my gosh, there's a problem, let's fix it. So our topic today, and I'm not going to beat it to death, I want to just kind of focus on some of it, is solving problems in pairs. And when I presented this to a couple people that I keep in dialogue with about the topics that I come up with and so forth, they wanted to understand what I was trying to talk about. Similar to the topic we had 3 weeks ago of solving a problem versus being a problem solver, there's a scope of perspective as to what exactly you're creating as a solution for things. And the inspiration for this time of year is oftentimes we don't think enough in preparation for what we're going to do during a certain time of year, like now, holiday season, holiday travel, holiday demands, until it's on us and or situations come up that we didn't anticipate, and we quickly try to resolve the issue in front of us. The issue of we are running short. Our weekend pickup pace, we've been seeing it slow after Thanksgiving or during Thanksgiving. We talk ourselves through an explanation sometimes. Well, it's historically what we've been doing, and certainly we add to the fact that for the past couple of years, we haven't had a normal aspect to our business cycles, or at least a more familiar one. I wouldn't say normal. Normal is currently now, but more familiar pattern to our business cycles. So we have these built-in rationales as to why it ended up being the way we ended up having in actual numbers, as a way of defense for ourselves. Like, well, we never knew that was going to happen, or that was an unanticipated angle to this, or we just didn't know, so we didn't want to do X, Y, Z or something. And that's fine. I mean, those are legitimately things. However, the construct is we're only looking at the short-term problem. Now, we can go in hindsight and say, man, we should have thought about this 2 months ago. We should have planned marketing strategy for this 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. That hindsight's always wonderful like that. But we don't often flip that forward and say, well, if it now is now, what are we doing about January? What are we doing about early February? What are we doing about Valentine's? And it is kind of unique that we're so good at seeing what we should have done looking back that we don't apply that perspective looking forward. Now, the short-term problems that are the first problem, which is the things in front of us, are the gaps, the fluctuations, the low counts, the group block that didn't fulfill its block, the demand that we didn't think was there, the rate that we have to adjust because we don't see it being picked up. So we now have to basically figure out how to capture the demand that is to market. And a lot of people panic when they get into their prime booking window and they decide that they have to drop rate and to hit their numbers. And their numbers are, it kind of flies out the window where everyone's all about keeping up with RevPAR, or keeping up with occupancy, or keeping up with ADR, whatever the strategy may be. And then it's a free-for-all to solve the immediate problem of we're not going to hit rev numbers for these certain dates. And we don't want, first, the repercussions from ownership going, wait a minute, you told me it was going to be this, and it ended up being that. Secondly, we don't want to put ourselves in jeopardy. We're at the kind of close to a finish line. A lot of people don't often remember that from a sales department point of view, we're coming to the end of fourth quarter bonuses. And there's two aspects to these bonuses. There's the quarterly bonus, obviously, and then, of course, you have more robust or more aggressive monthlies or whatever have you. That's always a constant motivation. But then you have the annual bonus. So we have now only a few days, now being December 2nd, only the rest of this month, to push over the big rock of the annual numbers. Now, some of you are either hopelessly behind or some of you are just really close. And so you have people that are very much about trying to make that their motivation of why we need to do these things, why we need to lower rates and just simply gen the revenue so we can hit budget number, go past our occupancy threshold, simply to make the top line revenue number that will bang the bank about this. That's still all short-term problems. The idea of today's conversations is that any situation that comes up, these gaps in your marketing from Thanksgiving forward, these gaps or these drops in demand that you didn't anticipate, comp sets that changed, events that didn't come to fruition and or didn't produce what was expected to be produced, groups that didn't fulfill blocks, allocations, and so forth. You're solving the immediate problem with changing rates and or strategies or what have you, but they're also, what is it that you're learning from it that you're keeping record of, so that situationally, if something like this is in the forecast coming up, maybe it's the same time next year as it is right now this year, maybe it's a similarity of a perfect storm of events that has created the scenario maybe at the time, is to learn from it the long-term solution. So I always try to approach with my teams the fact that whenever a situation comes up, a problem, there's actually two problems. There's the current situation of fixing what's wrong or correcting for what we need to correct for, but also the what do we do about this should the situation arise again, future tense. So we have a tool in the toolkit that says, this is like then, and we learned that this solved it, or this should have been done in hindsight, or we should have had this such and such going on. We see the possibility of this happening in the future tense. So let's learn from our past and realize that 6 to 8 weeks prior to getting ourselves in that same situation again, we said we would have preferred to have done XYZ. From a marketing perspective, I'm always an advocate of the timing of the cycle, the roadmap of discovery, education, and potential conversion of our guests. And there are influencing components to this. We've preached almost in some ways this process, this timeline that all of our guests go through. And the channels of communication are sometimes very specific, based upon where they are in that pathway. Social media, dialogue, content is very much at the beginning of that, but close to the wellhead, as it were. And we've spent these past few weeks talking about defining who it is that we're talking to with ICPs and personas and journey and customer journey maps and things, talking about how we can identify who we would be talking about. So now we know from our discussions this past few weeks, past few shows, identifying the person now, and we identify the content. We've had talks about tools that identify content related to what it is we'll be sharing with those people. Now comes the timing discussion. When do we engage with them with what content that will have the most effect to guide them through the dialogue with us to hopefully stay with us? And that comes to the two problem solving is right now you're looking at real numbers through Thanksgiving, whether they met your expectations, fell below your expectations, or exceeded your expectations. The reality is the numbers that you have. Now, you can look, if you're on the positive of things, and say, what did we do that in fact impacted this? There's never not a time you don't do this double solving problems, okay? Because the problem of doing better than you expected is just as different as not doing as well as you expected. I always had the hardest time when I was running and owning restaurants at that, when people had banks, the money that they used to be a cashier at a bar, bartender or as a server or so forth. And when they came back and they were on the plus side, they had an extra couple of dollars or more than that. And they're like, why are you mad? Mad. Why are you upset with me? I have more money than I should. One, you shouldn't. And that means that somewhere we took money from somebody that they shouldn't have paid that much for. And so it was an error. It's the same as being short in the sense of something went wrong. So being above your expectations is just as thought-provoking as being below your expectations. Why did it not land the way that you had planned? And that constant self-evaluation of how you proceed forward with your marketing is the way that you get better at being much more accurate in your efforts. One, it gives you the ability to solve short and long-term problems, because as you see things that pop up that weren't anticipated, just circumstantial things that come up, you have a series of tools that have a very defined impact because you've used them and you've gotten better with their accuracy as to the results of their usage. Now, this goes hand in hand with a topic that I brought up many times before. I have front desk people at my hotels where a situation came up with a customer, a guest, and they solved it. And I was very happy with them. They were very happy with themselves. That was great. And then I would give them odd advice from their perspective, and that is, don't do that exactly that way again should the same problem arise. And they're like, what do you mean? It worked. This situation came up. I did this for them and it solved the problem. You're absolutely right. And it'll probably solve the next person's problem that had the same situation, and the next person, the next one. But there will be a person in that line that has the same problem, and you're going to apply the same solution that you've done now, tried and true, and it's not going to work for them. And now you're back to where you were at the very beginning, that you don't have an immediate answer. It's better to explore alternative solutions, to build up your repertoire of solutions, so that should you apply what you think is the solution and it doesn't work, you have other solutions you've tried before with different levels of success that you immediately can go to, rather than having to think of, oh my gosh, now what? The same goes through with our marketing strategy. So say, for instance, reality, we've gone through Thanksgiving. There are those that fell below their expectations, those that fell at, and those that fell above. Those that fell at expectations, you may think you're off the hook. Like, well, I mean, I thought it was going to do this. It did this. So what are we talking about, Lauren? We're talking about the fact of, well, now the improvement cycle discussion comes in. If you did what you expected, then how is it now we can expand on it? Because obviously they're responding to what you thought they were going to respond. They did what you thought they were going to do. How now can we make that more? Because I doubt very seriously, and if you have done this, congratulations. If you tell me, Lauren, I was totally sold out, 100% occupancy. Great. Were you at 100% ADR? There will be somebody that listens to the show that said, Lauren, I have nothing to talk about with Thanksgiving. Now it's 100% occupancy, maximum racked up back of the door rates for everybody. There was nothing I could sell. There was not, unless I took it off the wall and sold it at the door, there was nothing more I could sell. And that I would say outstanding. And then I would say, what did you do with that audience? They're all in there. They're dedicated. They're paying them the most you want them to pay. They're occupying every room that you have available. They're spending everything that you want them to spend while they're there. What are you doing about nurturing and cultivating that audience so that they can continue that relationship with you in other times that they want to come, or ways of them becoming advocates for you to send others that are friends of theirs or like them, like we talk about with personas, similarities of personalities, to your hotel. So there's never a time that said, I am done. There is never a point that says there is nothing else I can do from what I've done, because there's always an evaluation process. So if you're not, even if you're at that perfect level, you can see that there's always something else that you should be thinking and considering about what you've just done. So knowing that 99.9% of us don't have that luxury of saying I maximized everything possible with the people that were with me, that only expands the things that we evaluate with what we're doing. The problem solving in pairs. Solving the current evaluation of what we did, good, bad, up, down, and also how is it going to affect the future tense in actually more than just one way. It's in two ways, because circumstantially we can say, well, whatever we learned from Thanksgiving this year as a holiday, we're going to apply it to our plans next year for Thanksgiving. And that's completely valid and exactly what we're talking about. You want to learn from the lessons of what you've done and to see the markers and the indicators to know how you should maybe react differently, or know they're coming up and be prepared for them as the same situational time frame comes up again. But there's also a lot of lessons to be learned from just the neutral circumstances of demand, inventory, and response. And that is, how did the general interest discovery of our product, the general usage of our product, general rate of our products get handled in our marketing strategy? And how is that applicable to any future tense where there is a event demand cycle that is similar to the cycle of demand that we experienced in Thanksgiving? If we break a holiday like Thanksgiving down, and I'm not harping on Thanksgiving, but since it's so much in our mindset that we just went through this at the end of last week, it's fresh as to the circumstances, the things that happened at our hotels and so forth. So we know that the holiday was on a Thursday. So let's just say it's an event on Thursday. We know the event drives a certain type of clientele. We know the event drives a certain level of demand. We know that there's a certain level of length of stay. And we know that there's a certain durability because of the time that's allotted for them to then have to be home to restart their lives for work and school and things like this if their family's related. So that quantifier says, well, when did they first look at? Let's go back and look at our data now. We've gone through the process. We've gone through the Thanksgiving 2022. Let's go through our data and see, when did they first start looking at us for Thanksgiving that they stayed? When was it that they were discovering us? And that data is in your website analytics. And I'm sorry that we're deferring to those that can have web analytics that brand you're blind. You don't have this luxury. Uh, you, you can try to find some data by communicating with your brands, but we've had that discussion many, many times. This part of the conversation is really related to having access to data. The sad part is, and it's a constant discovery from us with our clients as we begin to talk with new clients and so forth, they don't even have it set up to actually have this data. They sometimes don't even have analytics. If they have analytics, they have no events or goals set up to understand the engagement of the people. They just simply have raw, this many people showed up, this is the pages they hit, and this is when they left, their bounce rates and so forth. They don't have much beyond that. You have to properly set up what you're tracking with people to understand their engagement with you. And this goes back to our earlier conversations about attribution modeling, their engagements on multiple platforms and so forth. And when I say going back to your website for your analytics, there's so much you can track. And we pointed this out actually over the years of the show, that the dates that get put into your code on your website as to what people are looking for is definable data. You can see that geography, where they came from, the day that they're looking, and the dates they're looking for. And they can give you lead time perspective. When were they looking at your rates for Thanksgiving? How far back? But as I mentioned earlier, it isn't the earliest stage of engagement that you have to go back to. You can see through a variety of tools we've covered in our podcasts, trends, interests, geographies, searchabilities, but social is the key element to this. Because what will happen is people will begin to discuss their plans on social long before, or engage with social, not just necessarily discuss their plans, but engage with social much farther along than their actual tangible engagement with your website for your hotel. You're a component of the process. You're not the inspiration sometimes of the modality. Their family is, their interest categories are. So going into social and looking at one, Thanksgiving content and looking at when that is engaged with. And there's ways of manipulating data in Facebook or in their insights profile and so forth to see when were people engaging with this stuff? What were their interests? Was it an event driven in your market for Thanksgiving? Was it just simply the holiday dates themselves? What was the motivation engagement on a social level? We shared a tool, almost 2 years ago that still works, from the New York Times. It shows the geographic relationships between who in one region connects socially on Facebook to another region by color, like a heat map. The stronger the color, the more the engagements. And we talked to it way back then about the fact that it was about school engagements. As kids went off to college, their detachment communication was related to the college they went to based on the source of where they came from and the parents that talked back and forth when we were talking about it in that context. Well, we have to apply that interest to what we're talking about now, looking at these geographic relationships. Sometimes you can get this data historically from your websites because you see the geographic interest in your content, where they're coming from. You certainly can validate that now that you've actually gone through Thanksgiving this year with your actuals, which is your portfolio. Where did all the people come from that stayed at your hotel? And does that have a pattern for you historically? Yes, you have to include 2021, 2022, 2020 with the lockouts and so forth, and 2019. And I would say, even given this, that you're looking for broad brush trend, I would say throw 2018 in there as well, maybe even farther back if you have it, to see if there's a persistent geographic feeder market. You may actually have your feeder markets defined already, which would be a wonderful thing. Where do these people come from? And if you have been proactive up to this Thanksgiving, you would have been able to engage with the guests that are staying at your hotel as to what was their inspiration for coming. Was it family? Was it just to get out of town? Was it just to try something new? Were they going between point A and point C and you were the point B? Finding out what was your value proposition to those that stayed in your hotel is a critical component to talking about the things we've been talking about these past few weeks with ICPs, and ideal customer profiles, and personas, identifying and categorizing them in such a way that we can target them with marketing. That's what we're talking about, getting back into the timelines of things and looking at not just who we're talking to and the content that they're going to trigger to, but also the time in which we should engage with them. Because when it comes to social, you're not offering rates and dates. We've had this discussion many times. You're offering engagement, valuable engagement, not annoying engagement. And I say that from the context of joining a conversation or joining content And when we say joining content, it's engaging with platforms or social content that is about a topic that you want to be engaged with. You feel that you have a value proposition because you are in that market and or near that event, and are valuable to what the people are discussing. And you're annoyingly tone deaf in your dialogue. You talk about you. You talk about what you're offering. You talk about what you like. It's not that. It's you affirming somebody else's comment, sometimes just liking and sharing somebody else's comment. People are flattered. It's like, whoa, that XYZ hotel shared my comment about how happy the holidays are or Thanksgiving is in that town that they're in. That's very cool of them. Just that simple gesture. You didn't say anything, you just engaged. Now, when you say something eventually that contributes to the conversation, that person is going to be more positive in their reception of it because they felt that you were listening to them first. Sounds simple, but so many people don't do it. Then you have the contribution of content where you might be able to say, and this doesn't mean going to your website, although it's helpful that you would have this content on your website. But if somebody's struggling with understanding what an event detail is, or what exactly shopping hours are, or whatever it is, the local context of the content that an answer to, or know where they can get the answer or the link to it, sharing that with them, okay, also creates a positive perspective of you, because again, they're looking and say, wow, this hotel, they shared with me a link to the local mall that has all of the holiday special links in it, or hours, or whatever it is that they were interested in, or something, without a recourse of, oh, and buy our hotel or stay with us. They know why you're doing it. It's a Captain Obvious statement. They're completely aware of the purpose of why you're offering this content, because even though you're being helpful, ultimately you're hoping that they appreciate your helpfulness and they stay with you. So you don't have to actually be upfront with that. Now, as time goes on in that social engagement, you get an idea of when these people are getting to the point of making firmer decisions. You're in the dialogues of these people going, wow, it looks like a lot of people are really interested in the Black Friday specials that morning at that XYZ mall. I'm coming into town. I might want to make sure that I get my reservations now so I can be as close to the mall as possible. Maybe that's the trigger that you just say, great, well, we're right next to the mall. If you need a hotel room, we already got special rates, but you're right. They're selling out pretty good. Here's the link just in case you need it. That ability to continue contributing to that person's process is what makes the endearing relationship of them being directed to you for conversion. And that string, that storyline, is just one of many threads that you're running, not just for accumulation to the event of Thanksgiving, but as a progression always forward. Because you should already be having those dialogues about Christmas. You should already be having those dialogues about New Year's. You should already be having those dialogues about whatever's happening in your market in January, and on and on and on. That's the power of social, is that perpetual communication in story context of timelines that are long ahead of the actual things that they're talking and discussing about, but they're creating a rapport with people. That is the second solution. So instead of, oh my gosh, it's a week out from Thanksgiving, we're off pace, we just lost it, the block isn't going to fill, we're going to have extra 20 rooms, we're not selling at the rate that we said we can sell at, we have an extra 20 rooms to sell on top of it, let's drop our pants and lower our rate. That knee-jerk reaction is what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to make sure that the short-term solutions that you have available to you have a long-term value to the fact that you've done all the things up to the point that it's not as dramatic as that. You may still have a group block not fill. You may still have diminished in demand, but you also may know that there's market coming in, and or you already have compression and you have enough base business that you can just hold rate and say, you know what, we're not going to get those 10 rooms on group block. We're going to go over and not fill them with that rate, but we're still going to maintain our rate. Because at the end of the day, other hotels, they might still need to walk, and or we're going to get some contractual compensation for the fact they didn't fill their block or something. Either which way, you already have planned through this before this actually happening. That's the long-term solution from the experiences you learned the last time that these things happened in the same way. So when you approach problems, again, it's the short-term perspective of what is the current situation and what is it that we can do to solve it. But then there's the evaluation of how did we get to this point? And how can we see the indicators that created this issue so that we can look for them in the future tense, so that we know what we should be doing about it should they begin to show up. But more importantly, What should we do so that this doesn't get the way that it got, as bad as it did, for us to react as hard as we had to? That two problem solving perspective is always a process that you go through. And I can't say it enough that in marketing, it's the constant evaluation of your strategies. We have conversations with clients where we ask for the simple, in the sense of, hey, share with us what you see being in market with what's driving people into your hotel. Tell us what is catching the local news' interest. What people are saying, well, I want to catch that. I want to see the tree lighting, or I want to see the Christmas village, or whatever it is. Tell us what those things are as they're happening, so we can record them. So next year, well before the holidays, we can ask the smart questions in September and October. That is, okay, so for Christmas, you were saying, 2 weeks before Christmas, there was a lot of interest in the Christmas party. Is that happening again? Obviously we can find that out for ourselves in some way, some of the evergreen stuff. But just, how did it really work out last year? What was the perspective of people? How many people would really think were part of the hotel's occupancy that was there because of the interest in these things? And we evaluate that to know how much we should place that into our marketing strategy. So we, as the third party, come to you and say, hey, look, we have this campaign. We have the historical data. We know where they came from. We know when they were first looking at it. And we think that we start the campaign now socially, okay, to discuss the expectations of these events. And then we start peppering that with paid campaigns to validate, because you have to pay to get on top of the conversations. And then we keep pushing that forward until we get to about this point in timeline, probably right after Thanksgiving, where we begin in the ad campaigns to talk about our rates for that time, and the urgency of them, sense of urgency, to get the rates before they continue to escalate. Okay. And yes, you can point out things in the ad campaign that are like, our rate now is 20% less than it was last year, but we expect it to go up to this. This is a rate of 169. Last year it was 209. Book early kind of things. We've done that a lot of times where we've done peekaboo rates and so forth. The idea is, by learning from this, you're solving the second problem, which is the long-term problem of, if this comes up again, or should it come up again, or will it, for certainty, the issues will come up again, different ways and means, but they will be the same thing. We're looking to fill a down holiday. There are people, and it's like a cup of water. As it leaves one, it goes to another. Spring break is a lot like that. There are places that are the recipient of spring break. And of course, for that to happen, there are those that lose audience for spring break. They have to come from somewhere to go someplace else. And you're on one of those two cups, or you're in the middle, as people are going to or from, which is a high value position as well, because you can get double audience. You can get the people that are in transient to someplace else, and then you can get them on the way back. You get double good. There's lots of ways to look at it for that. Just like we talked about last week about gift certificates, that it's a unique opportunity this time of year. More so because it also doubles your audience, because not only are you selling to the people that want to stay with you, you're selling to people that know that people want to stay with you and they want to buy a gift for them that wants them to do that. You have double the audience, and now you have a captive audience that you can continue to engage with through the course of the entire year, until next year, where you remind them that you'll be able to get gift certificates, and you give them an incentive and reason why to purchase them with you. It's a strategy that is always in play. That marketing plan that used to be put up on a shelf so many years ago and dusted off at the end of the year just to change the date and put it back on the shelf, is now a living, breathing engagement. Dialogue between marketing and revenue management is persistent. Dialogue between marketing and sales is persistent. Dialogue between operations and marketing is persistent. It's a constant circle team of, what is sales driving that marketing can help with? What is marketing driving that revenue can yield? What is the fulfillment of operations that marketing needs to be aware of? It's a consistent dialogue on where we are, what we're doing. You should be having conversations right now about spring break and Valentine's and any other immediate holiday, in President's Day and things like this in February. You should have already solidified your current strategy about January, of what you're doing and how you're doing it. The reality is, most people are waiting for the budget to expire in 2022. They're in the holiday doldrums of apathy. It is what it is. It's going to run the way it's run. There's no more immediate impact that we can have, so forth and so on. Next year, we'll dust off the new budget. We'll get at it. Way too late already. Already the January campaigns for social should have been running for at least 2 weeks. Already your paid campaigns should have begun to get peppered in now. And 2 weeks from now, they should be in full tilt. You should already be pushing yourself to be in front of the people that are interested in potentially. And yes, there is a certain, once you start getting close to the actual holiday, like Christmas and then New Year's, there is a event blindness that happens with people. The consumer will not be on a triggered decision until they get past the holiday. A lot of people are like, "Well, I can book my February stuff now, but Christmas is 3 days away. I got so many other things going on. I'll just worry about it after Christmas." You can play to their strength. You say, "Great, book now, get the extra discount." You can actually play against the fact that people perceive that. Or you might say, look, we're going to keep in heavy dialogue, brand awareness in front of you, and then just drop the really good offers right after the holiday when people are like, whew, that Christmas was fun. Oh, yeah, I got the February stuff I got to worry about. Whoa, look at this. I got something in my mailbox about a special deal offer rate, whatever it is. And they knew, because of personas and ICPs, that that would resonate with them, because they had already shown through their engagement with you and your surrounding content and the fact you identified them as a persona, that there's somebody that would want to know that you were offering something at that time. That's where this stuff works the best together. But again, going back to clients and so forth, and meanwhile, they will give us a screen grab of their local CVB, TC chamber or something event, something's happening this weekend, going, hey, can you do something with this? No, mostly. Yes, kind of sometimes. Because in order to get in front of people, there's very few platforms with that short of a window, 7 days or less. There's very few platforms that can be triggers like that. Twitter, before it melted down, was a very of targeting people specific to context and geographies. Kind of that, boom, here it is, here it is, here it is. Because Twitter is very much about rate, date, do it now, book it now, see it now, because you have just this constant flow of stuff. And not everybody is fluent on the platform, which is, I think, one of his greatest downfalls prior to Elon Musk's downfall of it. And that is, they didn't understand how to organize groups or hashtag tracking and things like this. Some did, but not most. Most people just saw this massive fire hose of content and didn't know how to sort it. So basically, the platform was reduced down. If I didn't see it in my feed, when I looked at my feed, I wasn't going to see it, kind of thing, rather than tracking it as a hashtag or tracking it as a group that I want to follow, or create a group to follow it in, that I could go and look at them and see what the content that I was chasing and tracking had. And I see that I did post about these things. Very few people didn't know to do that. So again, Twitter, I think one of its demises of being a value proposition from a revenue source was that it never really educated its users on the true value of how to taper that fire hose of content down to a drinking drip that people could consume. So having these less than 7 days things that you want to try to feature, I have found that YouTube video is a wonderful, fun trigger. You can get in front of people very quickly. The message goes very quickly, and it can be very much immediately in front of the audiences that are engaging with it. Because what you do with YouTube is people are already actively eating that kind of content up on a regular basis. And because of that, you're just interjecting your content in something they're already streaming and get engaged with on a regular basis. OTT advertising is another hard trigger. The issue with that is that campaigns usually have to run longer than just a week. Not necessarily. They're getting better at getting more flexible. The Hulu platform right now is interesting. The minimum requirement for them is $500 per campaign, and you can shorten a campaign down dramatically. 10 days right now is the best we've been able to do. So I can run a $500 campaign with it for 10 days. So if I get less than a 2-week window for an event, and I can gen video content and ad content fast enough, and it goes to a place on our website that's valuable enough, I mean, we have to hop pretty quick, and we can turn something and burn it and get it running within 24 hours that has a 10-day shelf life, which means that we can tackle 2-week projects now in a very concentrated way. That kind of cool stuff is beginning to get where we can take on a property telling us, oh, I got these events coming up, and is there anything you do about it? Outside of putting it into our organic social content that we're aware of these events and sharing content, or maybe sharing our proximity, or just supporting the fact that the event is happening in our market for those people generally interested, you don't really get a direct channel contribution like, oh, yeah, we're going to definitely put some numbers on the board for you because we pushed on social media organically that the XYZ event that you highlighted for us, we talked about. It's better to have it as evergreen content on our website, should you have control like that, that you run campaigns related to it if you feel it's enough of a demand driver for you to actually garner stays with you at the hotel. And it's very hard because marketing mindset is the property managers and property management teams are about the operation of the property. They don't think in context a lot of times of marketing. For them, they see is like, oh my God, that's such a cool event down the road from us. Why are we not getting business from? Why isn't our marketing team doing marketing for us? Is because the event is a local driver. Everyone in the market is coming to see the tree lighting. Doesn't mean they're driving in to see the tree. It's not that they can't be, but the amount of people doing that and the time it takes to make sure that you're in front of those people to be aware that they could stay with you to see the tree lighting because of your proximity is a longer tail process. That's the process we're talking about being farther back in the timeline to make them aware that this is our value rate proposition for these types of things. This goes back to the two problem solving. The problem was this year, wow, we had this amazing tree lighting experience, but we didn't really get any people staying with us. And they said, oh, we didn't know you're so close. We would have stayed with you instead of wherever we were. That's because we didn't think about putting ourselves in front of those people far enough ahead of the event that they would have made us the consideration rather than wherever they stayed at. That second problem of, well, let's learn our lesson next year. Let's do that. Let's make sure that we put our content out there far enough ahead by research to know that these people will then discover us for those that come in for these things and know our proximity to it so that we are the place they end up staying with. And then there's a cost value return. How many people are we talking about? And is it just the one person that says something, or is it the 20 people that didn't? How many of those people do we think we're going to get? How much of that business can we literally poach from our competitors? If they stayed at our competitors, anything that stays at our competitors minus a particular amenity or particular value feature of that hotel is stealable. If it's either this and that, if it's just a variance that's not notable, I mean, brand X versus brand Y, then it's stealable. If it's because they have the most amazing restaurant or spa or something and people stay there for the ability to have immediate access to it, it's not as stealable. These things of poaching business, I mean, there's plenty of markets where you're sitting, it's like, wow, just not enough people come here at this time of year. Well, there's enough of them that you're not the only hotel because the other hotels have people staying with them, which means all those people, again, minus the considerations I just told you about uniqueness, is stealable to be with you. So it's important for you to be able to identify that. And that goes back to our ICP and persona discussion. Identifying what is the things that they're interested in, where are they, and all the information that you need to target them correctly. Those are the people that you then create the content for. They then look back and do the research as to when you need to engage them, on what channels they would engage with. Some people are very specific as to the modalities of their communication. And that's sometimes age-based, the TikTok world versus the Twitter versus the Facebook versus the Instagram. Okay. The modality of the communication you're sharing, Instagram visualization, personalization, TikTok visualization, eminent message, Facebook, longer dialogue, shareability, multiple content pieces. There's different channels of communication based on their usage, based on the demographics and the personas and the usability of those people. So it's a mixture of detail. It's not a blunt object. It's not let's just find the people that are staying with us for XYZ reason. There's all variations. We used to call it a market of one. Each individual person had their own unique motivators as to what they were looking for. You have some brands that are tailored to people that have a persona that they're very brand sensitive. They don't wear things that doesn't have a recognition to other people like them that notice that they're wearing a Gucci something or other or a Rolex watch or whatever it is. Those people relate to those people. They relate to brands that relate to them. They relate to being seen at those brands that relate to them. That's a whole persona that is, you can say, well, it's a demographic age. There's people in every spectrum of the age that have that perspective. Their commonality is that perspective of brand and their awareness of presence of brand for themselves. Then you have the influences of their families. The idea is that when you have the situation of who to get in your door, the imminent problem, your effort is to try to solve that, but also to solve the learning lessons from that problem so that the recurrence of that problem has another tool to be used for it. And also how in the future long-term sense, we don't even get to the situation of it being a problem at all. So like I said, I didn't want to browbeat the whole topic too much past the point that we added the timeline component into our conversations these past few weeks with personas and content development and so forth. Our podcast today, we're going to be talking about some really interesting tools that are about sources of data that aren't, first off, tools that you acquired through AppSumo or anything like this. If somebody says, wow, do you get money off of AppSumo? I say, well, you have an affiliate link for those because I keep buying so many AppSumo tools to use and just putting the show with us on. But it's not the only source of SaaS products and so forth. But there's a lot of really cool products out there that have a free aspect to them, limited usage, and just a depth of information of places that you didn't realize that existed that are open source coding things. They come with a caveat. You're dealing with open source. It's not as slick and smooth looking as their similar paid for cousins, but they function the same way. So in our podcast today, we're going to go through resources associated with gathering data that are different than what you normally think of the typical Google or SaaS products that we talk about on AppSumo and so forth. So that will be our podcast for today. So our topic today, solving problems in pairs. Hopefully we address some of the aspects of what was the inspiration of the topic. If you have an idea for a topic for us or wish to join us on the show, really, we're open about having people on the show with us. Matter of fact, we were in the throes of discussing of getting some of the old band back together, people that have been, when we had a lot of talking heads on our show. There are those that reached out and said, kind of miss those open dialogues. So we're thinking about doing kind of a road tour of getting the old band back together through the holidays. We'll have a couple of shows where we bring back a lot of our old hosts together so we can have kind of some open dialogue. We'll try to keep to one topic, but I think it's going to kind of venture off the path a little bit as we historically used to do. It should be a lot of fun. Always fun talking to everyone that they're so brilliant about what they do and what they know and so forth. It's always a joy to have them on the show whenever they do get to be on the show. We just had Tim Peter recently, and I just going to be on Tim Peter's podcast, actually, talking about VR and AR, metaverse and so forth. If you get that, go to Thinks Out Loud with Tim Peter. Excellent podcast, not because I'm on it, but it's Tim Peter's podcast. It's an excellent podcast. So for all of you that are watching us on the social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, on all the variety of pages and on those platforms, thank you so much for watching us. For all of you that are watching us on our TV channel, hospitality channel on Roku, Amazon, Google, or Roku, Amazon, Google, or Apple. Sorry, I always forget the fourth ones. You can do that on our TV channel. Thank you so much for doing that. And of course, if you're watching us on the TV channel as being part of our Hospitality Marketing Club, which is an advanced level hospitality marketing club, you can go and join us if you would like. You have to go through a criteria. Just go to hospitalitymarketing.club. You just see an email box. Put your email in. I'll send you a quiz. If you pass the quiz at 90%, we'll send an invitation to you. It's free for now. We plan on monetizing the community sometime next year when the community has the people and the dynamics that we feel are at a level that people will be willing to pay money to be a part of. We're there already. It's fun. But we want to make sure that we said we weren't going to start charging for next year. So we're not stepping into that record quite yet, but it's a lot of fun. It's only people that do what we do for hospitality marketing. It's not about learning about hospitality marketing from a basic level. We don't teach you what PPC is. We don't teach you what Google Ads are or anything like this. We talk about advanced metrics of how to create and do and run and strategies associated with advanced marketing. And it's a club. And in that club, you get the access for free to our paid for Gateway TV channel, which has more content for us as well. So if you're interested, reach us out that way. As always, I'll take any emails in relation to topic feedback or anything like that at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. Until next week, Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. For show number 383, my name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time and look forward to talking to you next week.